following program on Ada Derana 24 is classified as PG. It is intended for younger children in the company of an adult. It may contain some suggestive dialogue, infrequent coarse language, some sexual situations, or some moderate violence. Viewer discretion is advised. The following program contains opinions of the participants and does not reflect the views and beliefs of the Derana Media Network. The network believes in a safe space for all ideas to be expressed without any censorship and on its duty to create such a platform for free speech. Viewer discretion is strictly advised.
Welcome to another episode of TPS, where we discuss about the most relevant and pressing conversations that shape the future of our nation. And all this time we have been discussing about the current political landscape as well as the economic situation of Sri Lanka. So today we are going to discuss about a powerful topic which is absolutely broad, but then again we are trying to narrow it down with today's guests as well. And today's theme is about rebuilding Sri Lanka with unity, strength and economic growth, because rebuilding process is something vital and important in the current political landscape. So with me to discuss about this topic, I have two gentlemen over here. So to my left, I have Professor Aruna Shanthaarachchi from the National People's Power. Welcome you to the show. And also towards my right, I have Mr. Mahesh Senanayake from the Samagi Janabalaweke. Welcome you as well.
Thanks for having me here.
Well, welcoming these two gentlemen today for this program, we are going to dig deep into something that is crucial in this situation. So as much as this topic is very broad in nature, but first let's get into our personal opinion. As much as you represent your political parties, I believe you have your own personal stance as well. So I'm going to direct it first to Mr. Mahesh. Now, in your personal opinion, now when it comes to this topic, rebuilding Sri Lanka with unity, strength and economic growth, what do you think is the most essential thing that anyone, you as a person, political parties should really focus on?
First of all, thanks for having me here and giving us an opportunity to SJB to come and express our views with regards to this broad topic. What we as a party and what I firmly believe is that if you look at the current issues in Sri Lanka, those are linked to the economic status of the country. If you look at the broad daylight robberies to unprofessional, unethical practices, I believe all these go down to the fact that when the economy doesn't do well, people switch to various ways of, for example, sources of income. Yeah. And when the society doesn't have enough wealth, enough money circulation for its survival, the unity, sustainability, ethical practices, all that can go into its lowest possible level. So therefore, we believe that economic growth is of paramount importance and need to be observed, deliberated and accepted by all key stakeholders for the sake of this country's future and the survival. As we all know, 2020 is going to be a tipping point for us as we have to start repaying the debts. So if we do not repay the debts, what will happen to this country? We got a respite, but we again have a question whether 2028 was too early to agree upon. Maybe we could have 2032. We could have chosen 2032 as the year to start repayment. And in that context, Honorable Sajith Premadasa was of the view that 2028 was too early to start repayment. Nevertheless, now we have agreed upon the IMF conditions and we have to start paying the debts by 2028. If we do not pay by 2028, this country will be again in turmoil. So what we see is that anything tangible towards that direction to start repayments in 2028 has still not been done by the current government. We are not accusing the government, but the government of the day is entrusted with the responsibility of running the day-to-day affairs of the country as much as the country's forward march. So when we look at the current economic status, we all know that it has come to a stagnant level. From projected 5% economic growth, it has come down to 3.5% and next to 3.1%. I'm sure Professor Shanthaarachchi would agree with me. When an economy shrink this way, as it has a downward trend, it will impact all key economic indicators in turn, which will impact the day-to-day lives of the people, which we are experiencing today. I mean, even hands-to-mouth existence has become quite a difficulty for the common man, as much as entrepreneurs facing taxes, businessmen facing various regulations, and being given certain criteria to meet, all are facing a very turbulent period. Therefore, we believe that economic growth should be the primary agenda of the country. Whoever is in power, economic agenda needs to be discussed, it needs to be replanned, redesigned for the betterment of every Sri Lankan. Whether you have voted for NPP, whether you have voted for SJB, this country needs to be repositioned. In that context, we believe that economic growth and the status of the economy matters a lot. It plays an immense role, because if we forget the economic aspects and we are going to pamper the public with various kinds of welfare activities and political slogans, what will happen is we'll come back to square one where we were in 2022 during the economic meltdown, and we might even further go down. If you look at the current indices, they're not good omens. For example, inflation, we ought to keep at 5%, but it is now at times it goes minus. What does that mean? I mean, there's no demand and supply enough. So when there's no demand and supply, what does that mean again? Consumption is crippled and money circulation is affected. And on the other hand, employment is at 4 points, unemployment is at 4.7% and is poised to go further up. And if you look at today's exchange rate, the US dollar to LKR has depreciated to 303.50, and at the time of taking this program, recording this program, I mean, I'm really worried with the US entering the Iranian and Israeli warfare. This means the MENA region is going to be affected, and Sri Lanka exports human capital, exports a lot of commodities to this region, and this is going to again affect the entire global economy. And we are not an isolated country just because we are an island. So we are startled because the macro environment of the country and the global environment are quite vulnerable to the conditionalities and current scenarios that are developing across the world. I think Sri Lanka need public discourse of this nature, and educate the people of the need of the hour. Again, I would like to stress as the closing remark of this round that politics apart, trying to pamper people, trying to come up with political slogans, and with all due credit to the government, even trying to tackle corruption and waste. Yes, we salute government for doing that, but those shouldn't be used as tools for political expediency to cover government's inability to handle the macro and the micro economy. So our projection is that Sri Lanka is going through a downward trend again, taking into account that the indices that are seen as positive in most cases are positive because we are not paying back the debts. And once we start paying back the debts, which are at high interest rates, right, and we will come to the crux of the matter. So what we urge and request the government is, play your politics, pamper your political expediency, but don't jeopardize the country's future, because we have gone through enough, and there's no point pointing the blame finger at everyone who's opposing the government. So the government is responsible to ensure that this country is sustained and move to the next level. If not, Prashansa, you should not ask for power. You don't ask power to cry every day and blame every day, right? You are given power. This government has widespread absolute mandate, 159 MPs in parliament, executive president, prime minister, all institutions are under them, and they can create new laws, etc., etc. So the government can't blame the opposition, blame the people, and find a pretext for every misdeed they do, which I would like to dwell on in the next round. So, as a summation of my remarks, we firmly believe the society, the unity, rebuilding nation, all hinge on how strong we are economically. Our economy needs to be strengthened, needs to be reinforced. We can't take the IMF arrangement for granted. We can't be complacent. 2020 is just around the corner. Sadly, we don't see that anything tangible is being done by the government to pass the 2028 barrier.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mahesh. I believe he highlighted that economy is a pivotal point to make sure that Sri Lanka is increasing its ability in terms of unity and strength. And also he highlighted how the government and certain situations have been quite problematic or quite concerning as to if these matters really advocate for the fact of that Sri Lanka is establishing towards a more positive note. So with all that said, I'm going to direct this question to Professor Aruna. Obviously, it's going to be the same question about your take on how we can rebuild Sri Lanka in terms of unity, strength and economic growth. So I believe you have a take on his comments and anything that you need to counter on as well. But I also wanted to know if you feel the same, that economy is something that is essential to build Sri Lanka in terms of unity and strength, be it anti-corruption agendas, be it any terms of welfare as he mentioned. How do you think you as representing the government would take this consideration?
Okay, pleasure to be with you, and also thank for inviting me to discuss the most important topic. And basically, I agree with you because, as previously mentioned, that economy is the major component of the Sri Lankan situation, with the political stability and this development process and everything depend on economic situation. And also this government come to the power because of the political, or that's the political stability, and also the economic disaster previously what we face, I think you remember that the many issues what we face in here. So those are the root cause of just come to the power for this government, right? So based on that, today topic what we are discussing for the rebuilding and with the strength and economic growth, that's the government always actually focus this the rebuilding process basically based on inclusive and also the kind of the development process with three major objectives. One is called the sustainable development process, and also the political stability, and also the social balance position here now. These are the three major targets is a government focusing always. One of the most important point here actually, first we should have to be the political stability is a given priority, and also the meantime is very important for the sustainable economic development growth. Right. So then just I talk with the facts and figures actually based on the figures and facts, and very recently I think you remember that the Dr. Geeta Gopinath is the managing director of the IMF, is one of the good actually appreciation for the Sri Lankan economy, and also the implication of IMF and all their proposal actually, because at the moment this government is very carefully and very effectively follow the IMF programs and also apply those programs and they getting some set of economic benefit through that program here. Because and also the previously mentioned, I think IMF Julia is I think a communication director. He was highly appreciated the Sri Lankan government because the way how we apply the IMF programs and application process here now. Based on all those points, and also just look at the recent updates and the economic indicators, and once we consider the economic growth, I agree with that previously mentioned that the last year 5%, but this year first quarter is around 4%, and just 4.2 some percentage. The main reason for that one is actually the agriculture sector. The growth is minus 0.7. That the basic point and a major point why this year is still not reached to the 5%, because that is the natural disaster and heavy rains, and that part is a huge impact on the agricultural development. Therefore, but anyhow, that the most important industrial and other part is positive. It means the growth rate is positive, but unfortunately agriculture is just minus 0.7 for the first quarter. Therefore, the economic growth is not till just reached to the 5 point, but we believe that, and based on our programs and the plans, end of the year, the most probably the growth rate might be again 5% or sometime more above 5 point growth rate might be. So therefore, that is actually that is depend on several factors. And in the meantime, the last year and the previously actually the minus growth rate 7.8 something, with that is called the kind of the huge improvement with the last year. Therefore, all the credit should be given to the part of that and for the previous government, and also especially the leader Ranil Wickremesinghe, and that part we do respect to. And also some component is captured through the government programs, so the new government programs and activities. Therefore, and also just look at the inflation here now. Because it was just rocketing the inflation, 70% inflation, and last year also around 48% something, but it's now deflation. It means minus inflation. It is not easy task to maintain the minus inflation here, and especially because within recent past, within last 2 years, inflation is very positive and plus, and certainly we reduced to the minus level, and minus inflation is not good for economy actually. That is also indicating that some set of the demand reduction here. Therefore, not fully we agree with the minus inflation, but now it is just turning to the plus level, and anyhow that we try to maintain the less than 5%. That's the target, that the monetary the policy approach to maintain the inflation level less than 5% here is a good indicator. And also just when we consider the interest rate here, that's the most important, because we are talking the new investment, and especially for a small scale business. So that part is very, very important for the country. They are the major machine for bringing exchange. It means dollars here now. So therefore, the interest rate is previously it was around 28, close to 30%, but now it is around 8 point and less than 10% here. Therefore, now they are now just taking the loans and just investing, starting their business here. There is a kind of positive impact actually. And in the meantime, the two major variable, inflation and other one is the interest rate, and also the economic growth is now positive. We should have to maintain is the positive level continuously. And also what we consider here now, other side, the export earnings, that is very important, because the one of the major issue what we understood that the Sri Lankan economy facing two type of deficit here. Two type of that is called the twin deficit economy. What we are facing, the major trouble actually. One side is actually our trade balance. Always our export and import, just we consider here now, for a month we are importing $1.8 billions imports expenditure here. But just we are exported earning is around 1.3 billion here. Therefore, always here just 0.6 billions loss for a month here now. Therefore, the end of the year is export loss is actually, it means just close to the 10 billion. 10 US dollars billions is that is the minus. It means the deficit is that is the dollar deficit actually. Or it is called as the trade balance is always minus. This is one of the major issue. Therefore, we should address to that one. The way how we address that is one side is expanding the export here now. Therefore, now the export expansion is last couple of months actually is a very effective and positive, because this year target is $18 billion export earning. Is 18 because last year 12.5 something. Now this year 18. Now we achieved the target, because first 4 months, first quarter is just around 6.2 billion here now export earning. Therefore, expecting that we can reach the target here. That's a good point here. On the other side is actually import expenditure here. Import expenditure, sometimes we cannot control because there may be some outside external factors also. Even at the moment, some geopolitical instability that will impact on the import that component. And also we are purely 100% we are importing oils from the out of the world, therefore it's expanding. We cannot control because at the same time we try to improve the investment. Therefore, that is important component for, therefore, import control quite difficult, but the unnecessary import, it means those are the import substitute always try to develop here. Therefore, the trade balance, we always try to maintain some positive length in the couple of next 5 years, actually, the one major target here.
Yes. Professor, I'm going to cut you short from there because we need to run to a short commercial break. So we were discussing about the facts and how they show their stance in terms of their personal opinion, in terms of rebuilding Sri Lanka with unity, strength and also economic growth. So we will discuss more about this broad topic in the next segment. So before that, let's take a short commercial break. This is TPS. Welcome back to TPS. We were discussing about how Sri Lanka can rebuild itself in terms of unity, strength and economic growth, and these two gentlemen were highlighting how economic stability is something crucial and important in terms of fostering that unity and strength. So we were discussing with Professor about the export condition as well, and how the international tensions might and will definitely be a barrier when it comes to Sri Lankan exports and also Sri Lankan economy. So with all that, I wanted to ask from you, with the continuation of the same, now as much as we get the support of IMF, now do you think the government is utilizing this specifically for the long-term aspect? Because sometimes it's a little bit of a talk in the town and contradicting if the government is been utilizing the IMF support to quickly get into short-term clarification solutions. But in your perspective, do you all have a long-term game plan, and is it possible to get into recovery by 2028?
Okay, yes, good question actually, because the long-term sustainable economic growth is the most important, because as basic economic theory explained, the solo model is capital is the major part. Capital investment is the major component for the economic growth here. Therefore, when you are talking about the economic growth, the long-term sustainable development and the growth is the most important, as you mentioned, that is correct. And here now, at the moment is because there are some set of idea that is the last year and also this year at the moment is the capital expenditure is quite low. Yes, I agree with that one, because the capital expenditure last year, that total allocation for 1.2 billions, but already spending I think 800 millions only for a capital fee. The capital expenditure is very, very important, not for a recurrent component, if we compare the economic development and economic growth. And this year also at the moment is there are the less than 10 or just some percentage already spent. You know, the one reason, there are some, the reason is basically because this government, when we are spending the capital expenditure, they always look the feasibility here. Not just like the previous government, just for example, good example now, the Nelunkuluna also investment is a capital expenditure, and also the Hambantota some set of useless, that is called the useless conference hall is a capital expenditure. But this government just carefully look at the capital expenditure, the feasibility. What is the feasible, and given the priority for that one year. And also remember that last 3 years the capital investment is quite low, and also it was some issues actually. Some big investment is stopped here now. Therefore, the restart capital expenditure needs some time, because we should have looked at the feasibility of that component, and also the sometime agreement cancel. We should restart those agreement here. Therefore, that is the reason for quite delay for the capital component, right? But anyhow, that the capital investment is most important part for the long-term sustainable economic growth. Therefore, we should start as soon as possible that component, and that is the major component. That is correct here. And And also look at here now, because the most important here at the moment here, yes, that is called the political stability, and also some set of corruptions and that kind of that is the useless expenses always minimized by this government here. So that is also good nature and also good behavior that always reflecting for the party, other population, because otherwise if without good governance and minimizing the corruption, this kind of country, means Sri Lankan economy cannot further improve here. It's quite difficult actually here. So therefore those are the very positive action government is taking, and also we are expecting that the economic growth is timely, we can capture, and also the IMF program is very, very important. But the lesson learned from the IMF program is actually because the President just mentioned that hereafter we are not expecting again IMF facilities here. Now this should be the final one, must be the final one, because hereafter if we use that money for the economic development process, we can stop taking for the IMF loan here. So that is a very good indicator, but we hopefully actually we are expecting that hereafter we are not taking any loan from the IMF side here, and also that we learn, that is the lesson learned from the IMF side here. And also most important, as you mentioned, that from year 2028 onward we should have to repay the loans here. That is a big issue, that's correct, because we need additional 6 billion. Because additional $6 billion we need each year. We understood, we realized that one here, because that is not easy task. Therefore, the export earning process and also the import that is reduction process. So what is the thing? We should have to balance this one here. One side is, therefore, at the moment we have in only the 6.2 foreign reserve here. 6.2 here. What's meaning here? It is only enough for a 1 year loan repayment here, maximum here. Therefore, the economic growth should be accelerated here now. We are not sufficient, we are not satisfied with the 5-point growth. We need 6.7 point economic growth, really. And also, we need many foreign exchange. Therefore, the foreign exchange machine should be very strength here. There are many set of activities where we take this one. There are many possibilities. One is actually one side is the tourism sector. There are some the positive impact of that side here. The earning is continuously increasing, tourism sector, and also the export sector also is actually export earning increasing. Both one is positive, is upward trend here. So also we hopefully believe that we can manage that one here. So the government will properly manage that component by year 2028.
Thank you so much. So it was a positive note from Professor Aruna that the government has plans and do try their best for 2028, but it's all about actions and how it will go forward. So now, since we were discussing about economic growth, I am sure that Mr. Mahesh also will agree with me that economy is not only the thing that people really need to see through in terms of unity and strength, because I feel when it comes to the presidential election, to the local government election, till the current situation, I feel like people have been scattered in terms of their trust, faith, and in terms of how they rely on the politicians, the ruling party as well. So this is something very crucial, because we need to protect the unity within the country so that we don't go back to history and repeat itself. Yeah. In that context, what do you think is the reason that we see a small fluctuation in terms of the trust that the people have towards the government and also all the ruling parties, because they feel like they are not in the correct position, they are trying different means and ways, they are stagnated and scattered and worried about it. So what do you think it is?
Well, I think the inclusivity of this country has been greatly hampered from the 70s. If you look at the 1971 resurrection, 88, 89 dark period, 83 issue, then 30 years of war, the inclusivity had been quite impacted, and it still continues. And also we are in an institutional crisis, whether we agree or not, right? We can't trust our institutions. Widespread corruption, widespread waste, the truth covered, some segments in society mostly brainwashed by the politicians and so-called trade union activists, socialists have contributed to make people disbelieve in the system. So we need to take remedial actions to rectify this issue, which has not been tangibly done, right? As we all know, Sri Lanka is a multilingual and multi-religious society. So the people's interests vary from one to another. Therefore, we need some uniformity, not some actually, a great uniformity in the way countries govern. So I can dwell on the past in 1956, if you go back to post-independence of 56, after the independence it was the 56, single only rule. Then forcible law on government public officials that they had to learn, Tamil public officials had to learn Sinhala to get a promotion. So all these leftist and very chauvinistic approach has contributed to where the country is today. Okay, lessons always can be learned from the past. Once you learn a lesson, you need to apply to a mechanism and bringing corrective measures. We learn, Professor will explain, we call it continuous development cycle or continuous Deming cycle. You know, you learn, you keep learning, right? Now, is that happening? Now, if you look at the current government, yes, they could unite people around them and they won a majority at 3 elections. And if you look at the promises made by the current government and what actually is happening, now there is a stark gap, a yawning gulf, and it's widening every day. So the same people who trusted in the government, not only with this same government, even with the previous governments, right? You trust, and the moment the delivery is questionable, people start distancing. Yeah. But we as a party believe in a policy framework that will be unchanged. Okay. And it should be a policy framework that is acceptable and caters to all strata in society. This is not lip service. This needs to be practically done. Now, taking from some of the statements Professor said, let's all agree, now it's enough paying lip service, right? We can read books and we can bring all theories and say this is how you can make the country flourish. But has that happened? Now, take sustainability. Sustainability and economic growth is widely spoken about in all global fora. But for sustainable development, sustainability is not preserving environment. From a traditional perspective, you could say you preserve economy, right, by not having manufacturing plants, right? But today, can you do that? You can't, right? There is emission of gas, emission of smoke, emission of various hazardous gases when you do manufacturing. And how do you offset it? By bringing technology-based sustainability initiatives to mitigate the harm by manufacturing. For example, now even for this, you need economic growth. So, Professor, we are in an era where we need to question: is economic growth is sustainable? So forget sustainability. I'm not saying to forget sustainability. Economic growth, yes, we need. Economic growth, is it sustainable? Because you need investments in sustainability. Because many research have shown that if you follow sustainability practices, initiatives, you can always edge out your competition, and your balance sheet will become a stronger balance sheet. I mean, if you look at all global brands, it has been reflected during the past 10 years. Now, whether you are in the government or opposition, especially people who understand the crux of the matter have a bounden duty towards this nation to come here and tell the truth. which is what we do because our leadership, Honorable Sajith Premadasa, always tells us, if you lie, you will get it back. Right? As much as if you tell the truth, the reward will come to you quite late, but it will benefit the people. Now let's come to the current government situation. Right? As Professor said, I fully agree, we need to expand the economy. How? We need to mitigate, we need to offset the trade balance. How? We need to maintain interest rates. How? We need to bring foreign direct investments. How? And I don't see anything tangible happening in this context. Now I'll give you a good example. If you look at the central bank stats that I have them, 2025 so far, from May, central bank has started purchasing US dollars to the tune of about 260, 270 million US dollars a month. So what does that mean? That means they are going to meet the IMF target of collecting 2.5 billion US dollars by purchasing dollars. Now if you look at the impact of this action, on one side, government needs dollars, and when government buys dollars, there won't be enough dollars in the market for importers. And whether we like it or not again, right, it's not lip service, we import a lot of stuff, in colloquial language, a lot of stuff to this country, right? From inputs to consumer items to commodities to everything we import from other countries. Unfortunately, having Professor 98 of literacy rate, we even import services, we even import knowledge, because all educated ones have gone abroad. So I must appreciate Professor Shanthaarachchi and the people of that caliber. These academics, at least, even though we are in opposing camps, at least staying in this country and contributing to the country. Right? Even I firmly believe. So not only import of commodities, Professor, today we are even importing knowledge. Why? The knowledgeable people are only good at blaming and finding better places for them. So that is where unity comes. We need to unite, not for parties. We need to be united to protect the motherland. So this is one example of CBSL purchasing dollars every month, right? Impact on US dollar, impact on LKR are not being catered to. So what we are saying is, if we want dollars, we need to take tangible actions to earn dollars. One is tourism, right? Okay, tourism sector is one very clear area where we can build foreign exchange. But Professor, unfortunately, this government opened importation of vehicles, right? I am in the tourism industry, so I know, I am aware of this. You need cars, you need flat roof vans, you need high roof vans, you need 37-seater, 45-seater, 51-seater buses. Prashansa, you just check in the market the cost of these vehicles. Buses, 20 million and above. Vans, 20 million and above. A decent sedan car, 16, 17 million and above. So how can you buy a car, invest and make money? Because per kilometer, for instance, Professor, per kilometer we pay only 80 rupees per kilometer for a sedan. And driver's bata is 2,500. So I challenge the government. If you are genuine in earning exchange, bring these reforms. Government is unable to do that. Instead, government is only interested in forming local government bodies. Even if you were in government, we shouldn't have done this. If we were in government. And I'm damn sure that we will never go in this path. So, government has not been pragmatic. Yes, we build tourism. What actions have we taken? Government could have easily given some kind of a solution to registered travel agents, registered hotels, which government is not doing. But government is quite worried about when we question the release of 323 containers. One example. And even if you look at the way government is practicing the monetary policy, I have questions whether it is genuine. Okay, let's forget monetary policy, but the fiscal policy, right? Taxation is key role in fiscal policy. So tell me a single positive decision government has taken other than abiding by IMF rules. We will also work with IMF, but we need to renegotiate IMF conditionalities by looking at the global and the local scenarios. But what the government did was blaming the previous president and blaming the past governments, right? They have still continued to do what they have been doing, right? As I said, we appreciate setting an example on corruption and waste, which we salute, which we too agree, because we are also against corruption. But the dilemma of the government today is, government doesn't see whether it's a storm in a teacup or they don't see the elephant in the room. Sometimes when an event of great magnitude occurs, government thinks it's storm in the teacup. I saw Honorable Sunil Andriti once says, the Middle Eastern war will help us. We can prosper, right? And they also don't see the elephant in the room. Why? Yes, we talk about debts, no plans to gather enough dollars and be ready to pay back. Or else at least we should be in a position to renegotiate with IMF. And final remark, I always believe in this, even within my party, I argue, Professor, on this. There are 3 principles that we need to follow when we take policy decisions linked to economy. One is, we need to see how this decision impact the demand and the supply curve. And we need to look at which way the demand and the supply curve move. And finally, Professor, we need to see how it can impact the equilibrium price and the quantity. Now, this will look like classroom work, but this is how countries have prospered. This is how countries have grown. But unfortunately, now even Malimawa says, enough positions for academics. I mean, it's an utter lie. Academics are used for their branding, but today this country is not run by academics. This country is run by Palavatta. This country's decisions are taken by Mr. Tilvin Silva. This is why we are suffering. And before we want to grab power to form a government, our interest is to protect the interest of the whole nation, right? That is why we are adding pressure on the government.
Thank you so much, and that was absolutely a very descriptive explanation into how it is with the situation where we feel like economy is something that is vital, but also the other avenues, like he rightfully mentioned brain drain, which has been a very big concern to Sri Lanka. So we will go to the final segment where we discuss about the final points that really matter to rebuilding Sri Lanka and bringing forth the unity, strength and economic growth. So before we go into the third segment, let's go for a short commercial break. This is TPS. Welcome back to TPS. We were actually discussing about how we can rebuild Sri Lanka and not focusing solely on economy but also other aspects such as tourism, brain drain, and how small intricate matters actually do a ripple effect in terms of this country's rebuilding process. So as we come to the last segment, I wanted to ask from Professor, now if you were given just one opportunity to implement a flagship reform or initiative under the banner of this theme, you have absolutely got the opportunity as well as the ruling party. What would it be and why would you believe that would change this entire trajectory?
Okay, actually at the moment is we have already started many changes, it means many rebuilding process here. So out of that we are given the high priority for the economic changes here because the economic policy changes basically here. Now the basic concept, it means the policy level, the NPP government is applying for a market economy with some set of social interference or the social movement here now is a because theoretically one side is extreme case for the capitalism and other side is socialism, but in between these two now we are applying for a social market economic policies here. That's the reason for actually that continuing the IMF programs and also given some support for the market expansion. And meantime, can I give some answers for the previous two questions? One is a dollar mismatch here. Yes, I agree with that because central bank is purchased some dollars because that is because on the mismatch between the demand and supply actually, because it means dollar supply powerful than the dollar's demand, right? The dollar supply powerful because of the one side is export expansion and it may be sometime foreign investment, or those are the supply side here. Dollar supply side is strong, means a good actually is the positive impact of the nation, but in the meantime demand also should be matched with the supply, that is correct. But within very short time period, because the last 2-3 years economic crisis here is a bankrupt economy, remember, therefore we cannot forget that one. Therefore the dollar's demand is naturally, dollar demand will increase but need some time here. So that's the reason for the dollar mismatch. So that's why the government is purchasing, the central bank is purchasing, but that would impact on the strength our that is foreign reserve here, one side here. That is not just only the ask from the IMF demand here. That is the real situation. And also the other one is regarding the government revenue side here now, the tax income and the government revenue, as you know that it was around 8% out of the GDP, very low level, is a big issue, is the GOTAS period here. Government income significantly reduced, but now is just reached to the 13-14%. Is a huge improvement, therefore tax base already expand. Now additionally this year is actually around 0.6 million that join with the new tax base here now. Is additional tax people, it means join with the tax base here now. And also the tax collection process is now is starting and systematically, and now we already start with the online platform. And also I also last month paid through the online platform. It's a good indicator, and everything is now starting with the IT sector and online platform. This is a positive impact, and we can further expand the tax collection and tax revenue is a good indicator. And because the second major issue is in our country is actually budget deficit. Each and every year around the $7 billion deficit, 7 billion. Just you can imagine that just we are taking only $3 billion from the IMF within 3 years, but each year the budget deficit is 7 billion here. So therefore need some set of the revenue collection process, expands the revenue collections. That is very, very important here. So therefore here, just based on all those things, and also I want to answer for a vehicle case here now, because last 3 years we stopped the vehicle import, correct? If we can reduce the taxes, that is so better, because the purpose of importing vehicle is one side here, expand the tourism sector. If the target is that, I agree with this one, because the tax, it means here that taxes for the vehicle import should be reduced.
That is, at least for the tourism sector.
Yeah, at least for the tourism sector.
Very easy for the government to do that, but government is not doing
the point here now, because the government target was just spending $1 billion directly sometime, because without that taxes, the government thought basically that expanding the import, that means vehicle import expanding, would impact on again for the foreign exchange, because our target is 1 billion, but sometime if the tax is very low, would be sometime 2 billion or 3 billion, again would damage to the foreign exchange. Therefore everything should be balanced actually here, because when we are ruling the country, it means here all and each variable should be very carefully balanced. We face a different situation because of our politicians previously not properly touched the variable, right? They always just looking at the political jargon and they do not properly manage the economy. That's the reason for Sri Lankan economic collapse actually here. If they perfectly target the particular variables, and if they took the decision correctly, we are not facing this kind of trouble here. Just think about the Sri Lankan airline. Even at the moment, last year, the $200 million losses, Sri Lankan airline. And the I think including the CEO, 2 people, air banned here now. It's just corruption is 18 million, but that one also find from some other people, not Sri Lankan context, and 2 million is already taken. This kind of situation in Sri Lanka face here now. But there are many SOE, it means that the government's maintained bodies are 526. The government's, it means some organization is actually looked after by the government. Around 400 is getting losses here. Therefore, need some sort of restructuring and restructuring process for all those institutions, because otherwise all the burdens goes to the tax people, you and me and all the 3 people. We should have to pay for the taxes to look after those useless government bodies here. Therefore, need some sort of strength. That means very carefully look at all those things, and we should change this thing and need some restructuring process for that one.
Thank you so much, Professor, for that final remark in terms of what the government would do differently this time as well, and in a futuristic note, what have they planned in terms of governing Sri Lanka and how it will look like in the future. So, as a final remark, I want to ask from you a very short and sweet reply to this. I know it's going to be a challenging question, but yes, if you were in the governing body, if you were the main party and main political movement to make sure that you govern Sri Lanka and rebuild it better and make sure it regrows from its economic situation, what would you do differently, which is what is being done by this government?
We will first look at prioritizing items that affect Sri Lanka's economy. This country, this government has failed to prioritize, and they are trying to pay heed to everyone. Right? Now, Professor said, balancing everything. In a crisis, you can't balance everything. Now, even if you look at the economic regression, you look at a variable to variable, assuming other variables are permanent, and you withdraw those variables. So, Professor, what has happened to the government is trying to entertain to all stakeholders. But we as a political party, we will prioritize and we will ensure that most affected people in the periphery will be looked after at a sufficient level for them, for their survival. Because if you try to do everything at once, most important items, most important aspect will be affected. End of the day, country to run, economy has to run, cash flows have to be there, banks and finance companies have to finance the system, right? And the taxes have to be collected, and these are key aspects. So we will look at what are the key aspects and give priority to those. And also we will definitely go into a renegotiations with IMF by taking into account the current context. Now, if you look at Honorable Sajith Premadasa was the first person in 2020 raised in Parliament and said we should go to IMF. But people laughed at him, and most of the things that he stated are true today. And even I did not believe this fact. When IMF offered us the period of restructuring, they had first agreed to 2032. Reportedly, the previous government and the previous president has agreed to pay it in 2020, which I did not agree. Once I looked at documents also, if I am a person who loves this country, if I am educated enough to understand that, I do agree. And I actually debated about this with Honorable Sajith Premadasa on this, and then he proved it. So we would have taken some lead time, but taking this time doesn't mean that we can sleep. Now, IMF First Deputy Managing Director Ms. Geeta Gopinath made a very nice statement in his recent presentation. She said, no policy errors, reform or regret. So let's in unison tell our audience and tell the public, reform or regret. When you do reforms, there will be short-term regrets. There will be short-term difficulties, but you need to bear it. Actually, it looks like I speak for the government. Actually, I'm not speaking for the government. I speak for the people of this country. We have left our businesses, we have left our ventures, our careers, and doing politics. Why? Because we believe that we have some kind of strength to guide people, help this country to move to the next level. Because if we don't protect the nation, we all will be perished. So we are in a situation, reform or regret. So these reforms need to be done. Government can't refrain from doing reforms for the sake of winning elections, right? And past 6 months, if you look at past 6 months, there have been so many errors by the government, right? And to hide these errors, hide these shortcomings, all what government can do is blame the opposition. Now see how it has boomeranged. Before local government elections and soon after, they said we will not form local government bodies with anybody. But today, what happened in Galle? What happened in Pillayan's district? So in politics, you should not overpromise. So we are scared because when we observe the past 6 months, this government is only good at showing off, only good at display politics. I call it display politics, amidst some tangible measures. For example, this controversial importation of drugs. And I respect the government for taking initiative to strengthen corruption and waste, because we want a country which is free from corruption. You can't make it again zero free, right? You know, but at least corruption and waste at a lower rate. Then this country will prosper. And also we need to look at how we are going to reposition the country in all angles that we can see. And we need to align Sri Lanka with the global agenda. We hope and pray that government understands this context, right? And we as a political force believe that our approach needs to be pragmatic. Our thoughts need to be sincere, because you take the government for 5 years, but you live in this country average 60 years. So for 5 years you can't take things for granted. So I can go on these matters. But finally what I would like to tell you is that, as I said, when you see a storm in teacup, you can't just ignore and see it's a small issue. Small issues have become bigger issues. When Gotabaya Rajapaksa was the president, when everybody said there was a virus being spread across the world, he didn't care about it. When we pointed out that our dollars are dwindling, right, they took very stupid measures, right, like repaying the SBIs without having a mechanism to resell the bonds, right, and without maintaining foreign reserves. So small issue became, and then fertilizer issue. Small measures became bigger issues. Then if you don't see the elephant in the room, right, if you don't see the elephant in the room, for good or bad, again you are going to be in trouble. These proverbial statements have not been said for the sake of saying those. We are facing a huge debt, twin deficit. So these two, twin deficit, huge debt, and on the other side, economy is shrinking. So I feel there's not only one elephant in the room, there are 3 elephants in the room now, right? So we as a country, we as a nation need to understand this context, right? We being the opposition party, not here to praise the government, but we are here to represent the people and pressurize the government for the sake of government, for the sake of opposition, and for that matter, for the interest of the entire nation. So my final appeal is that let's be open to criticism, let's be vigilant, let's educate ourselves, and let's take decisions based on facts. If you are in a position to study, if you are in a position to understand these crucial facts, please read, learn, understand, and educate another person with the correct terms, because this country has had enough politically expedient initiatives. I think enough is enough.
Thank you so much, Mr. Mahesh. That was good take on how the SJB will do differently if they get the power to rebuild Sri Lanka as the governing party. So today we discussed about how it is to rebuild Sri Lanka in terms of unity, strength and economic growth, and it has been a very broad topic, but we tried our best to narrow it down, and these two gentlemen gave their absolutely honest and positive feedback and response as to what is happening, what should be done differently, and how the future is. Is it positive? Is it having some improvement? Will it be improved, and how it is forward going on? So I want to thank Professor Aruna Shanthaarachchi from the National People's Power. Thank you so much. And also Mr. Mahesh Senanayake from the Samagi Janabalawegaya for joining us today with TPS. So TPS is a platform where we discuss about the most relevant, crucial and pressing conversations that you need to ask from the political leaders and the ruling parties. So not to forget that your feedback actually matters for the improvement of this program and also other programs. So send us feedback to feedback.ad24english@derana.lk or send us a message via WhatsApp at 076-8057-933. We will see you again with another episode where we discuss about crucial matters that actually benefit for the improvement of Sri Lanka. Seeing you with another episode. This is TPS. Thank you and have a great night.